Hello and welcome to Rediscovering Childhood, a podcast that brings you lots of practical information to help you become a more conscious parent. This podcast is brought to you by Discovery Playtime, an Irish business that provides high-quality educational and sensory toys to help your children develop skills through play. Visit discoveryplaytime.ie or download the app to get inspired. Welcome to a new episode of Rediscovering Childhood. Today we're here with Shannon McKiverigan and... Stop it! I said it so good.
You did say it so good.
And I'm delighted to say that she's our event coordinator for Discovery Playtime, and she'll be co-hosting some of the episodes in the early childhood education area because she's an expert. So hello Shannon, and thank you for being here today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to share my story and people to listen to everything I have to say.
Brilliant, because it's very interesting. And Shannon has a degree in early childhood education and care, and she did that in Carlow, and she's worked in London, and she's worked in Kildare, and now she works for Discovery Playtime, and we're so happy to have her.
Definitely the best one.
So Shannon, tell us a little bit about your childhood.
That's a great question. When you told me you were going to ask me this question, I was a bit nervous about it. I don't remember a lot, but what I do remember, and from what obviously my parents and my family and all tell me, is it was very much an outdoor situation. It was, no matter rain, hail or shine, you're outdoor playing. We have a big green in our estate, so it was always, you just met everybody on the green and that's how it went. And I think the biggest thing in that is the socialisation aspect of it as well. You had to be social. You didn't have a choice. If you were on your own, someone was obviously going to come over and ask you to play, or you were just going to join someone's game. There wasn't really a big thing about having to ask somebody to play, or you had to find people. Like it just naturally happened.
Yeah, and I can really see it now with you, because everything that I come up with, or we come up with ideas, and the teacher training or the podcast, and you'll just jump in it and go for it, and it's amazing. That's a skill. That's definitely a skill, and I can see that's been practiced, and that comes down to childhood and being exposed to many experiences as well.
And I think there's especially in Ireland, there's a lack of information and conversations happening around early childhood as well. So I think it really is important to have just a space to go to kind of find out a bit more information as well, because Google is obviously so big and there's so many different options out there, and sometimes it's kind of hard to filter through and what to listen to, what not to listen to, what's true and what's not true. So just coming from a background of obviously doing my degree, working in it and things like that, it's nice for people to listen if they want to.
Exactly. No more filters, just listen to us.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So would you like to tell us why you decided to study early childhood education, and how did you come up with the idea of studying that?
Absolutely. I think most people in education is the same, that when they were younger, they've just always kind of wanted to do it. I remember even being in preschool myself, and any of the new children who came in, I was always like, come play with me, I'll show you around. Look, this is the table that we sit at. And I was always that child who was like, just loved showing people around and loved taking people under my wing and things like that. And even with my younger cousins, they're about 2 years younger than me, and I was like, they're only young, you have to mind them. Aww. And I'd be like, come play over here, come play in the bouncy castle with me. And I always, just for some reason, just kind of gravitated towards younger children, and I feel like they're more fun too, because the older you get, obviously the more you get into school and secondary school and things like that, you get a bit boring, unfortunately, because the creativity just isn't promoted and it's not encouraged. So the younger generation is always a lot better. And I think with early childhood education, it's very much, you can really appreciate each child's personality and really follow what they want and what they would love to do and their interests and everything as well. Like, they have the whole world ahead of them when they're that age. There's so much that they could be, that they could do, and they haven't been really put in a box yet. So it's definitely one of my favourite age groups to be with.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that just shows how important it is as parents to provide that time and space for children to be themselves, to explore the world, to explore who they are in the world. Yeah. And that's, you got to know what you like, and you can see now, looking back, that you really got to explore that side of it. Yeah. And now you became a teacher because of it. So,
absolutely.
When kids are stuck to screens, or they're missing out on being outside, exploring things, they're missing out on that opportunity to get to know who they are and what they want to do.
yeah, when it comes to technology and things like that, it's really easy to kind of feel like you need to fit into a box, or you can see what other people are doing, so you think that you need to do the same as what the other child is doing. But I think the biggest thing to remember as well is in the first 5 years of a child's life, they learn the foundation on how to learn. Like if you think of a child before they're 5, they learn how to walk, they learn how to talk, they learn how to communicate. Like they come out being this fresh little baby who can only cry, and that's it, and they have to learn how to communicate through crying, and they change their cries then as they get older to say, I'm hungry, or I need to be changed, or I'm uncomfortable, or I need a bit of love. And from there it just keeps going. Like they learn to use their muscles to walk, and then as they get older they learn that they can refine these muscles and they can learn how to run, so they can constantly build on the basic skills that they've made to do so much. Like a child who say learned how to crawl, in 20 years they could be in the Olympics running.
Yeah.
Just because they made that really good solid foundation of having that space to learn how to crawl, to learn how to walk, and to explore their environment. And really, I think just to recognise, well, children know what they need, and it's really hard to trust that when you're that young, you know that, oh, I know if I need to get over to that toy over there, I need to try find a way to move. So they find a way to move their muscles and move their body to get there. And it's the determination as well, and trusting themselves that they can get over there. And if they need the support, there's going to be the parents there as well to support them. And it's a magical age, and magical to think of everything that they're exploring. Their brains are firing so quickly, their synapses are firing so quickly. It's so hard to keep up with it all.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I can see, I was actually reading a book recently, and, you know, we always thought that when children are born, they have nothing in their brain, and then they add stuff, things as they learn and as they experience the world. But I actually came up with a study recently that says children, when we're born, everything is already in our brain. And what we do is every time we experience something, it reactivates that knowledge or that learning, and it creates new connections. And we already have every language, we already have every word, everything in our brain. But it's based on our experiences that we will activate one language or another, and then the other ones kind of get forgotten, in they're gone, because we can't have everything active in our brain. But it's such a big sponge, and powerful, very powerful.
Yeah, you use it or you lose it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And one of the biggest things I remember in college, our child development tutor was talking about how babies have a swimming reflex. So like this little newborn baby who can't even hold up his own head, if you put them in the water, their throat closes. They're not going to drown. They can't physically drown, and they automatically move their limbs that they can swim. Like, how amazing is that this small little child knows exactly how to do it. And like that, if you continue, you can build on it, they're going to be great swimmer when they're older.
Yeah, definitely. And that just, I think parents we can be very scared of letting our kids do those things, you know, put them in the water, or let them jump from a rock, or because we're afraid that they'll fall and they get hurt. But it's really important that as parents we learn to step back and let them fall, let them fail, let them make mistakes, because there's no success without failure. And if we want our kids to success, we need to make our kids fail. We need to allow them to fail and make mistakes and learn from it, because kids learn from what they do. They don't learn from, I told you that, I told you not to do that, I told you you'd fall. They don't learn from that. All that does is killing their confidence. You know, if we tell them, don't do that, you'll fall, be careful, I'll help you, that kills their confidence, because we're sending a message that you can't do it, you need me to do it, you can't do it, you're not able to do that. But just, if they fall, they'll get back up. They adapt to anything. So that's very important.
And the other day I was on the beach, and there was a child, obviously, who I'm assuming lived near there, because he was completely at home. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he was up climbing on the rocks. And even me and my mum were a bit like, oh my goodness, is he okay? He's climbing up on these rocks. What happens? Like, he's gonna fall, like he could fall or anything. But then I actually had to step back, and I put my teacher hat back on again. And I was like, you could see in him, he's done that before. He knew exactly how to place his feet, so he knew that he was steady. He like tried to go a bit further to see if it was okay for him to go further. Like, there's so many things going on in your brain without you realising, and like looking to say, oh, there's not a hole there, there's something flat there, I can put my foot there. And if it's steady, you go, okay, now I can move my other foot over here.
That's it.
Like, they're always like rechanging their brains and how they're thinking and things like that. And like you said, you need to fail Because when you realise, oh, that didn't work very well, how can I do differently?
Yeah.
How can I make it better?
Yeah. Yeah, and it gives you the confidence as parents as well. When kids leave the home, you know, they're more prepared for the world. So I'd feel more confident knowing my kids have experienced all that while I was beside them.
Yes.
And now they're well able to
Yeah.
take on the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. So you said you did your degree.
I did.
And then did you move straight to London after finishing your degree?
So throughout my degree, we obviously had to do placement in second and third year. And from second year going into third year, I got a job in one of the crashes I did my placement in, just doing holiday cover. So I was in anything from babies, wobblers, toddlers, preschool, all the way up to after school. So I got really great experience there. And in our final year of college, a teaching agency came in from London, and they basically sold up this great opportunity that we could go over to London. We were going to get paid regardless of how many days we worked. And we got to be substitute teachers. We could go in, and because we were early childhood education, if your degree actually goes over to England, and from there you can teach from 0 up until 8 years of age instead of 0 to 6. So we could go all the way up to senior infants, and then because we were substitute teachers, obviously we could go further as well. And that was the most terrifying, rewarding and incredible experience I have ever done in my entire life. Because like you said in the first episode, when you were talking about the first time going into your classroom, be covering maternity leave, and you were just kind of looking, going, I've learned all this theory, but they didn't tell me how to work in a classroom. Yeah. It was a bit like that. So I went in the first day and I was like, okay. And they were like, so you know how to teach read, write, ink, phonics? And I was like, who? They're like, okay, so you just do all of this. I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, and then they're learning Mandarin. I'm like,
what?
They're learning what? And these are 5-year-olds. So obviously over here, you don't learn Mandarin when you're 5. That's something you do when you're an adult. So from the first get-go, I had this big culture shock, and I'm only an hour across the water. I was so shocked. But looking back from when I first started to when I finished coming home in June, I learned so much, and that's where I got the confidence as well to come back and go straight into a job and be like, yes, I know what I'm doing. I can run my own classroom now. And over in London as well, the preschool, so that's their nursery, is actually part of a primary school. So it's very rare that you will have a private nursery. It'll always be part of a primary school. So they just come in a different door. So they've seen the primary school. They know most of the teachers from walking around and going out to yard and things like that. So the transition from them going from preschool into primary school is so seamless that they don't really have to think about it. There's no fear or anxiousness going on there. It's just another thing they have to do in like another classroom that they get to go into.
That's like the school we did the training a few weeks ago as well. And is that just that school, or is that the system?
It's a system.
Brilliant.
Like there's very few private daycare nurseries, and if there is, generally they'll be like 2 doors down from a school. They'll always be close. They'll always be part of the community, and the nurseries will always have their own little yard space as well. But over in the UK, they're so big on risky play. At first, when I walked in, I was a bit like, oh my God, they're going to fall. Oh my God, that child is going to fall. And I was like running around frantic. But the more I looked at it, I was like, no, none of them fall. None of them fall because they grew up doing this.
And why do you think it's not like that here in Ireland?
Well, one of the biggest things we always hear about when any time I try to ask any of the owners of the preschools I've been to, it was always insurance.
Okay.
But we were speaking to a school recently and they said they got insurance for things quite recently. But with preschools, most of our preschools are privatised. So when it comes to something that's privatised, it's very easy if a child falls or some things like that to go through like lawyers and sue them and things. It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
And we just don't trust ourselves, I think. There's not really a big risky play phenomenon in Ireland at all. Like we said, we came from my childhood being you go out into the field, you climb those trees, you do whatever you need to do.
We've gone to the opposite side now.
Yeah, we've just kind of gone to like helicopter parents and wrapping them in cotton wool, and it's a lot to do with obviously social media. And I think COVID had a really big impact on all of that too, because we were told that the world was so dangerous and so scary, and then just magically it's opened again and it's fine. Like that's such a hard thing to try and get your head around, that you were instilled so much fear inside of yourself and you were told to stay inside and that you couldn't leave, or you're going to get this really bad disease nearly, or like infection that you don't know what's going to happen and was so unknown. And then 2 years later it was like, okay, you just go back and do what you need to do.
And how would you present that to the parents? So if I owned a preschool, how would I get the parents on board of me having a more risky play approach in the facilities, and say we're going to take risks in this place, and what way could I present that to the parents so they would trust me and know this is the right thing? And your child might fall, but we have all the procedures to deal with it.
Yeah.
We all have first aid training, and if it falls, this is what happens. This is the learning behind it. So how would you present that? And could you maybe have an agreement with parents saying, it's hard to find that balance between my child comes with a blue eye home, or my is actually learning. It's really hard. It's really hard.
And I could see it transitioning from when I first came back from London. I went into a private preschool they built it on an old primary school, so it was all a lot of concrete floors and things like that. So we came from, obviously that's not an environment that you can support risky play in whatsoever, because it's just too dangerous, and no matter how much the child can learn, it's not really feasible.
There has to be a limit.
Exactly. And then I moved into another creche where risky play is part of their ethos, and seeing the difference was the communication with the parents. So from the get-go, when the parents come in to view the creche and the preschool, it's one of the first things that's explained to the parents is that it's a risky play environment. They bring them out into the garden. They show them the garden. I think it's the biggest thing when it comes to parents is really letting them in. Like, they don't have to stand at the door and just let their children come in. Like, if it wasn't for parents, preschools and creches wouldn't exist.
Yeah, they're part of the school life.
There's a reason they're called stakeholders.
Yeah.
Because they are so important, and especially they're trusting you with their child. Like, this is a human that they've formed.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible thing, and they're trusting you to make sure that you're safeguarding them as best as you can, and like that, safely taking risks.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest thing, is you can take risks, but in a known environment, so that you know your parameters. So like that, bringing a parent in, explaining what's going on, like you said, explaining what you have in place, that all the people are first aided. There's always a first aid kit that comes out with us. Even if they want to try the equipment, if they want to try the climbing frame to make sure that they find it's sturdy and things like that. Like over in London, they used to always have an open day. So the parents used to come in for the whole day, and they used to be able to play with their children. They used to go out to the outdoor area. They could go into the indoor area. They could do and go wherever they pleased. And they could be the child for a day and come in and play and see how much learning goes on in such a short space of time as well.
Yeah, it creates a lot of trust as well from parents that they can go in. It's not like a hidden place or a secret that their child is in there. It really builds that trust.
Absolutely.
So you came back from London and then you started a job in a preschool.
Yes.
Did that meet your expectations?
No, in many ways than one. So the biggest thing was going through your degree. Obviously you have the lecturers who are trying to teach you to be the best educator that you can be. So they're really bringing in a lot of the best bits of it, and they want you to be able to trust yourself to go in and really back yourself on your ideas and what you can bring to the preschool. And then you go into the preschool and you're met by a stone brick wall because there's people who have been in that industry for 20, 25 years plus. And I completely respect that. I've learned so much from people who've been in the industry for so long. But there's such a reluctance to change in preschool that they're really much like, oh, well, we've been doing it this way for the last 15 years. Like, you just come out of a degree, what do you know? It's very much this environment where I think people who want to get the better education are sort of frowned upon.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're coming out of college, we're really excited, we're so excited to come into these places. And then we're met with these people being like, oh, you just come in, you want to change it, and then what? And it was really tough as well, like that, on your mental health, because my confidence was then gone. I came back from London, I was like, oh, I can run a room. I'm so excited. I've been a teacher for a year. I've been in preschool, junior infants, senior infants, first, second class, all of those things. And I really got to be able to build up a relationship in such a short period of time with these children. And I was so excited. And then I was in the preschool, and I was also put into the junior preschool room. And our junior preschool room wasn't from ECC years onwards, it was from like 2-year-olds who were fee paying. So they were so young. They weren't really ready to leave their parents and things like that. And it was just very overwhelming, and like that, with very little support. It was just more of a, if you asked for help, or if you just kind of expressed your, I think my biggest thing was my worry of, there was all of these children who were upset, and then you'd have the parents who were upset, and I just kind of wanted support on how the best way to deal with that was, and through obviously the preschool's policy, because you have to fit into the ethos of your preschool. And it was a bit more of a like, oh, you're very overwhelmed. Yeah, you were so upset with all of them too, and like, oh, it's fine, you're only new. But I was like, no, like, I'm willing to learn if you're willing to teach me. Yeah. But you're just kind of met with all of this resistance. But then on the opposite side, and the positive side, I think my eyes were opened a lot more for the teaching aspect for myself as well. Like, from my first year there, I stayed in that preschool for 3 years. By the end of my 3rd year, I loved it. It was one of my favourite things that I did. I was so excited to go up in the morning. I was so excited when I was doing my lesson plans, because I had really got into my rhythm of learning the children. And because I was there for 3 years, I got a lot more responsibility from the preschool as well, because they began to trust me then as well. So I went from being the new person who was scared to finally, as much as I tried to advocate for the children and advocated for play-based learning, and to be able to bring in the emergent curriculum and to be able to follow the children's interests without having to sacrifice the ethos of your preschool and the way that you have already run things before, of being able to kind of keep a set routine as well. And as much as I kind of felt like I was shouting into the void eventually, because I kept on it, and I kept bringing research. Like I'd say I had my manager's heart broken that every time something new came up, but every time I did new training, I was like, look, I did this really interesting training on play and the environment, and look, I have my certificate, and this is all the information that I learned. Can I try it? And I think I wore them down more than anything else. But after seeing how my preschool was run, how my classroom was run specifically, and how the well-being of my children were, like, I didn't really have a lot of problems the second time coming in of children being upset, leaving the parents or anything like that, because we just kind of made the classroom that was like a second environment to them. Mm-hmm. So they were excited. They knew what they're coming into. They knew what the day went. They knew they were coming into free play. They knew they had to hang up their coat. They had to hang up their bags. They had that responsibility. And this was around COVID as well. So they had to wash their hands and make sure they sanitise their shoes and things like that as well.
Yeah, I feel, and I've come across a few times actually with other teachers as well, that one of the things that kind of holds you down is that you have to constantly prove yourself, mm-hmm. and prove why you do what you do. Yes. Rather than just doing it, you have to spend time and energy on sharing and showing all the evidence and science behind the mm-hmm. actions that you do to prove that it's actually, the right thing to do.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to other teachers that might be in the same situation, or parents who don't trust that sort of methodology or approach in the classroom?
Mm-hmm. I think, as silly as it sounds, one of the biggest things is communicating your problems, or communicating your concerns, or just asking for a chat. Because especially when it comes to parents, I know sometimes they can feel quite isolated. Like that I was saying earlier, that they come to the door and then they stop. They can't continue on into it. Although we all know parents are the first teachers of every child. Like, they're the most important person in the child's life, or even primary caregivers. And just to even ask the teachers themselves, because I know sometimes when you go to the manager, it can kind of get filtered down a bit more. But I respect so many parents when they just came in, they were like, is it okay if you just ring me a bit later so we can have a chat about Mary Jo? And then they could express their concerns, or if they have any questions or anything like that. And also your teachers feel a lot more comfortable then as well, because I think parents obviously trust the teachers to do their job, and they know, like, they picked that setting for a reason. They chose to send their children there to a certain school or to a certain person for that reason. And just to hear a bit of reassuring words as well, just to say that it's okay, I do know what I'm doing, and be able to get the chance to express yourself a bit more.
Yeah, and that's really rewarding for teachers as well, because it's going that extra mile, and it keeps bringing that motivation back a bit, because I think, you know, when you go into a new setting and you're just fresh air from college, and they'll be like, they're actually helping a whole family, absolutely, and a child and the parents as well.
I think there's a bit of fear probably as well when it comes to owners and managers, because there's someone who can come in and they can rock the boat so easily and so quickly by just asking a few questions or suggesting a few things, that you then might have to feel like you have to change your whole practice, when it's so easy just to kind of go step by step. You don't have to change your curriculum overnight. Even if you just introduce small little steps and little implements here and there, like maybe one activity a week could actually be following the children's interest. And it could even be outside. If you don't want to start inside, do it outside where there's more space, you have a bit more freedom and things like that. And one thing we started during COVID in our preschool, which I really loved, is we started a WhatsApp group for parents. So every day or week we used to always take lots of pictures on what we were doing, and we used to send them in
and talk to them and see different perspectives in the topic. So Shannon, if you had the chance to change anything at all in the early childhood education system in Ireland, what would it be?
How long do you have?
We've got a few days.
I think one of the biggest things for me personally that I think would really help streamline all preschools and education and things like that is just the consistency. Is to change. I personally would love if all preschools could be public instead of private, because at the moment I think there's a lot of people in it for profit, and they're running it as a business as opposed to an educational system. And as well, if they were part of a school. So like over in the UK that I was saying, your preschool, your nursery is actually part of the school. So they are under the education system. They're under the Department of Education and things like that. Whereas as of now, we are under the Department of Education, but we now have 3 inspections every 2 to 3 years. So we have the Department of Education, we have TUSLA, and then we also have PUBL. And all 3 of them are inspecting 3 different things, but there's also a time where all 3 of them could contradict each other. And it gets very confusing, and you're a bit overwhelmed on who you should listen to and what you should be doing first. And as well, when they inspect you, if they find something that can be improved, they'll write it down in a report and they'll tell you, you should improve this.
There's no real feedback that's like helps you grow as a
there's no like, you should improve this training, or could you maybe, like, we have Better Start and there is recommendations for Better Start, but it's not mandatory.
Just to tick the box. And
it's to tick the box. Like, I've heard of a setting that they were told to do Better Start. They booked the session. They sent it off to 2 centres for like, great and fine, and they're getting the money. So why should they progress anymore? So I think with the consistency from the top down, all the way from the government, straight down to the owners, the teachers, the children, the parents, so they know where they stand, and to make things mandatory. Like, our national curriculum framework, Asher, that was done in 2009. We're in 2023. It's going through a reform at the moment. But when it comes out, we don't have a training that we have to do. It's just, here's your curriculum. Learn it.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's up to yourself. Like, I think it was during COVID, we had to do a certain amount of, it's not mandatory, you don't need it. If you do it, it's like, all right, you did that yourself. You took your time to yourself. There's no well done. There's no, oh, that's really interesting. Could we share that with anybody else? There's no reward and respect for upskilling and wanting to learn more and wanting to do your best in it as well, which I think there's a divide in early childhood education. There's the ones who go in and they love their job and they love what they do and they really want to improve. They want to make the children's experience as best as they can be. And then there's people who go in and they get paid.
Yeah,
and they do
that's
it
when
to
the
get paid.
passion comes in, and you can really see who's passionate about what they do and want to go the extra mile.
Absolutely. And then it's the ones who are passionate and nearly have to make up for the ones who don't care.
And it's very frustrating.
It is. Yeah. So you're doing double the work and you're not really getting any rewards, any benefits. Like, no one acknowledges what you do. It's just expected from you at that time.
Yeah.
So I think really, if you make it consistent, if you put it in from the Department of Education, and you know the level you need to be at, you know what your baseline standard is.
But it does need everybody to be on board in the same team.
Absolutely. And I think especially when it comes to preschool as well, a lot of the time this is the first time a parent has gone somewhere with their child since they've been born. So like, they've been so isolated for nearly 2.5 years. It's a community that they're becoming a part of, to have that access for them to be able to contact somebody else if they need it, to just talk to another parent, and even if it's to stand outside the gates for 5 minutes just to be like, I'm having a really terrible day.
Yeah.
And then the other parent will be like, so am I. And they know they're not alone in it. Just to know you're there. Like, you're not alone. There is other supports out there.
Yeah. Support your well-being, the parents, the children and the
Absolutely.
teachers, everybody. And if we all help each other, and that's what we're here for, to
Yes.
support each other. You know, and if you support me, I'll support you. And,
Exactly.
you know, it's a bit unconditional, but it's not. But it works. It works in a circle.
It does, absolutely. And I think the teachers are there also for the parents. I think sometimes there's a bit of a standstill that you don't know whether you can go and you can chat to a teacher, or you can kind of be like, oh, my child is a little bit off today because we had our grandparents over the other night and they were stayed up so late and now they're really tired. Like, that can mean so much to a teacher, because we know that we need to give that child a little bit of extra space. Maybe they need to lie down for a few minutes when they come in. It's so nice to have that communication so we can make the children's experience better. And also, when the child goes home, that you don't want to speak in front of the child, you can speak freely as well. And another challenge as well, which is a little bit unrelated, which really annoys me, is as a preschool teacher, you're not recognised as a profession, you're not recognised as a job. When I tried to register my taxes, there's no preschool teacher, there's no early childhood educator. I either have to go under as a primary teacher, or sometimes there's childcare worker.
Oh, wow.
But I'm not either one of those people. So if the government doesn't recognise what we are,
Who will?
who will?
Yeah.
Like, we're just a person. It's like we're a filler in the education system. And people are like, we know they're important, but we don't want to tell anyone else that they're important.
In the most important years of a child's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that,
So here's a start.
It frustrates me. Absolutely.
Here's a start. Yeah. Talk about, but I think that was very, very interesting and really good perspective, a really good perspective that brings a lot of thoughts into what's happening in the early childhood education system in Ireland, how we can make it better as parents and as teachers and as a community. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us in our Rediscovering Childhood podcast.
Card, which outlines the benefits of joining your local library. Be sure to check it out.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to share your own story on our podcast, please get in touch through our social media. Don't forget to like, share and follow so you'll never miss out on upcoming episodes. See you next time!